Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today on this webinar on data democratization, the subject that can help you unlock the true potential of the data lake within your enterprise. The webinar is being delivered as a continuous effort to create leapfrogging advantages for our customers and to advance the marketplace of cutting-edge big data solutions. I'm Pankaj Bajpai, Senior Manager of Marketing at Impetus Technologies, and joining me as the expert speaker for today's subject is Pranav Ganguly. Pranav is a Senior Architect with the Innovation Labs at Impetus Technologies. Now, let's take a quick look at the agenda for today's session. So as you can see on your screen, the session for today we'll be presenting the case for data democracy within the enterprise. How does the data democracy affect or impact the modern enterprise? What are the common implementation challenges that you face while implementing data democratization? And also present to you a clear path to this democracy. And we will also share with you the available and supporting products in the market. So move to the next slide. As you can see, as businesses increasingly embrace the big data paradigm, they need to stop focusing exclusively on the big and also consider the promise inherent in data. Access to the data and the information as it contains is very vital for business agility. And in a rapidly changing marketplace where consumers are increasingly producing and consuming data as a part of their buying behavior, getting information in the right hands at the right time is absolutely crucial. It can mean the difference between retaining the customers or losing them, or whether you can capitalize on what's trending versus missing the boat. And also can mean the difference between finding problems in time versus in hindsight. This actually forms the argument for data democratization. Companies making large investments on data need to seriously consider making it as widely available and easily usable as possible. This actually ensures extraction of the most value of their investment, as well as enabling extremely agile and responsive behavior at all levels. The code that you can now see on your screen showcases the Forrester view that successful, competitive, and agile enterprises will actually need to empower their entire workforce to make the right decisions. Not just their boardroom planners or analysts. So let's look at historical example where something similar had happened. We've all seen that the origin of business computing saw the adoption of the mainframe computer. And these were expensive, and only large organizations were actually able to afford them at the start. So their usage was rationed based on the decisions originating in boardrooms or executive meetings. But the arrival of cheaper computing and the desktop disrupted this behavior. So it enabled task automation at all levels, leading to massive increase in business productivity. We can see a clear repeat of this happening for the data warehouse. In traditional data warehouses, both storage and processing power were expensive, and they continue to be so today also. This actually leads to the natural rationing of these, and organizations prefer to put them in hands of experts who are expected to generate the most value out of the investment. However, similarly to what happened to the mainframes, recently we can see that the big data paradigm is driving the cost down by orders of magnitude. We feel this indicates that a disruption of the traditional practices about the data-driven business decisioning is beginning to take shape. And we can count on it being followed by a similar increase in the business benefits, of course. The next screen shows another quote by Forbes, and it captures the view where data-driven business programs tend to falter. In Forbes' view, this is caused by a disconnect between the actual business user and the data, which is actually not easy to use, and so it is actually not used. In most organizations, data lake adoption programs are focused on achieving two major goals, as many of us would have experienced. First is creating an all-encompassing store of an organizational information that can be mined by data scientists for new business insights. And the other one is asking the IT to port legacy applications from data warehouse to the data lake. This, however, is the same thing that organizations have always been doing. It's only getting bigger and is resulting from viewing the data lake from the same perspective as the traditional warehouse. But the data lake and the big data paradigm are creating new possibilities of entirely new and innovative use cases. We now need to make it possible and then actually put it in the hands of decision makers at all levels across the organization. The next screen is about the modern data warehouse, the data-driven enterprise. It needs to embrace data democratization. It needs to stop rationing the data warehouse. It needs to stop exclusively creating limited views of information like dashboards and reports. And by that way, encourage all decision makers to ask questions and find answers in the data. Obviously, it's needed to make the data simple to use and encourage its usage. And in doing so, the organization will automatically empower all these stakeholders to make best decisions timely. Also extract the most value of its investment and create an agile business top to bottom that can actually rapidly react to information. So what should we now do? Should you be throwing all your users into the data lake? Obviously not. You should be getting ready to democratize your data in a better way. And for sharing more insights about this, let me call on our expert for today, Pranav. Pranav, over to you.
Thank you, Pankaj, and hello, everyone. Yes, as we have seen in the previous slides, I mean, there's a strong case for data democracy, and it can indeed be a game changer for businesses. But what does it truly mean to implement it? We cannot just dump users in the data lake and have them use it. We have to face the fact that the data lake in its native state is almost impossibly complex to navigate for anyone with a technical background and certainly for someone without one. Unlike most traditional warehouses, it is built out of many storage and processing platforms. Each comes with its own way of interacting with data, in its own lexicon for data manipulation. Also, the 3 V's of big data, volume, variety, and velocity, further complicate the problem as an unbounded variety of data is ingested into the system with no clear use case. So let us now examine some challenges that organizations face when they try to implement democratization. The slide highlights some prominent ones, such as the unknown nature of data, that it's not really known what data is in the lake. Organizations face a problem scaling the legacy processes for, let's say, governance or access onto the data lake. And of course, there is also the challenge of the complex technology stack, which is orders of magnitude complicated than the traditional warehouse. So imagine a business user trying to solve a problem. It is natural for them to ask, is there any data that can be relevant for me? Also, if the data is there, then how can I obtain it? Imagine another user who finds a data set that seems valuable to them. But how do they know if it is accurate and fit for use? And who can answer for its quality? And what if they need to join some data that is spread across disparate storage platforms, as can easily happen in a data lake, maybe a file, a database table, and a NoSQL store? What does the user do then? Do they need to deal with all these platforms and know how to manage these technical platforms and interact with them? Users might end up feeling that this data lake business is just too complicated and thus choose to avoid it. And that will certainly be a great loss, as the business will end up with a valuable asset, like the data lake, being underutilized. There seem to be so many challenges in democratizing the data lake, and they can seem very hard to answer. However, we feel that we can categorize them broadly into 3 main questions. The first question user would ask is, how do I find data in the data lake? And who can help me understand it? Then, once the data is found, they can ask, how can I get this data? What are the governance policies that I need to follow for its usage? And finally, they can ask the question of how do they use such complex and varied data, what could be a simple way in which business users can start using it to become productive and spend less time wrangling with the technical complexities? In addition to answering these three questions, we feel that the key success factors to successfully address all these challenges are also going to be simplicity and a very good user experience. Without making the data lake easy and pleasant to use, no amount of organizational urgency or encouragement is going to bring people to its proverbial shores. Let us now look at how these challenges can be addressed in some detail. So the first step in this direction is data discovery. Discovery helps answer the question of what data is available. What does it mean? Data lakes by design are meant to ingest and hold all the organization's historical and current data. Its vast, cheap storage space eliminates the need to curate data upfront and actually optimize storage and thus the cost. So it is no longer necessary. It is no longer necessary to understand what benefit can be extracted from the data and weigh it against the storage costs. We can now store everything and keep it indefinitely as we look for new ways of extracting insights from it. Today's junk data could lead to valuable new information in the future. However, this has its own challenges because by the same design that helps the data lake just hold whatever is dumped into it, it also becomes very challenging to inventory and understand its contents. We no longer have the days where a database IT team served as the gatekeeper to the storage and knew what was in it. Data now is created and integrated in a much more decentralized model. Storing all the data is becoming the new mantra. And no single team or person seems to know what all of it is. Gartner estimates, and I quote, that through 2018, 90% of deployed data lakes will be useless as they are overwhelmed with information assets captured for uncertain use cases. So, as a user looking to find data relevant to a business problem or just as an area of interest, navigating the storage and identifying what is relevant is, as we see, quite difficult. And it is here that discovery plays a big role. A data discovery solution helps organizations find and understand the data they have in their data lake. This is done through manual contributions from data stewards or data owners, and as well as applying increasingly new data mining techniques. It also helps the establishment of a consolidated store of this metadata that is extracted and captured, which can help answer questions about the data, be it about its technical nature, the business aspects of it, or even answers questions about its governance needs. Finally, it also needs to help users browse and search for data and collaborate with each other to define and understand the database better, share their insights, and so on. Using data discovery, users can get a clear and precise answer to any question they have about the data lake's content. What we are seeing currently, however, is that many ease of use aspects are also being projected as part of discovery in the marketplace. And we agree that without discovery, usability is hard to achieve. So most usability solutions will need to address it in some way. But in our experience, the core discovery capabilities are the ones that we just talked about here. These are the capabilities that can power many of these usability features that we see in the market today. So, and we will of course examine these discovery capabilities further when we discuss the tools for discovery. So, moving on to the next set of problems. The next challenge is accessibility. So now users know that there is data present that can help them. How do they get access to it? How do they get it? Data access and provisioning was a very well-known paradigm in the world of traditional warehouses. And it used to be very simple, actually. Certainly in comparison to what the data lake now demands. Data access was managed through SLA-driven approval process, and provisioning was as simple as granting a select privilege on a table. However, this does not work in the data lake. The quantity and variety of data, the multiple storage platforms, and the uncurated nature of data all make answering some key questions that are fundamental to access and provisioning very difficult. As a user who needs data, how can I know who owns a particular data set or who can grant me access to it? Let's say I need several data sets for my use case. Does that mean that I need to now negotiate access with several people? How do I know what are the governance concerns around this data I need? Maybe it needs to be encrypted. I need to store it in an encrypted way, or some portions of it need to be masked before it can be handed to me for my use case. Who can help me set this kind of stuff up? And finally, how is it to be provisioned to me? Can I simply read it from where it is? Or does it need to be moved into a sandbox after some scrubbing? Does it need to move across storage types? And who can help me do that? Central IT teams have a very difficult time in tracking and mediating such requests between owner and requester. It is difficult to deal with the provisioning intricacies of each one of the several storage platforms that exist in the data lake. And it is also difficult to understand the nature of uncurated data and what governance policies need to be applicable on it. And these problems can seem unsolvable at the data lake scale. This often leads IT into believing that the only way they can successfully manage the lake is to keep its usage restricted to, predefined, well-known use cases. This, however, is not a solution. It just ends up keeping the data under lock. The data lake must not be avoided because it is complex. We actually need to focus on making it accessible. What is needed are data accessibility solutions. And what these solutions need to do to address are things like helping users easily request data, maintaining track of data ownership and applicable governance policies, supporting workflows that can track requests, route them, lead to their fulfillment, and even provisioning tools that can aid or even automate the data provisioning, which is now much more complex in the data lake. Any data accessibility solution should ensure, however, and this is most important, is that the data is accessible easily. And at the same time, it should ensure compliance with governance policies. In this way, users can focus less on logistics and more on being productive. Also, given the time-sensitive nature of information and the impact it can create for the business, it is important for this process to be as fast and as automated as possible. And automation also has the pleasant consequence of bringing down IT support costs, which leads into having less concerns about having an open-to-all data lake. So we come to the final and the most important parts of democratizing the data lake. The part about increasing the data's usability, making the data usable. After the users know that they need data and can obtain it, what do they do with it? How do they do what they want to do with it? This is very complicated in the data lake versus traditional RDBMS-driven warehouses. The number of storage and processing platforms is greatly increased. The relevant data may be fragmented and scattered across a variety of stores. And it's not just SQL anymore. Many more technical paradigms are involved in manipulating the data. The accuracy and veracity of the data that is not curated is also suspect. So how then is the data lake usage to be simplified enough so business users can start feeling comfortable with it? This question actually we have found doesn't have a single answer. There are many ways to increase the usability of the data lake. And some of the best ones are to, as highlighted, are to wrap the technical plumbing of the data lake under abstractions like virtualization or provide views of data in the shape of the business entities they apply to, correlate them with the business entities. We can also help by bringing down the learning curve that is needed to work with the data by using visual paradigms or familiar existing languages, things like charts and graphs, or languages like SQL. And we also need to help users by wrapping the very powerful data science algorithms that can really lead to, absolutely new kinds of insights. Things like, and then really ease up the work of the business users. Things like, let's say, data cleansing, classification, and so on, into easy-to-use tools that can actually be put into the hands of business users and they can start using it without needing to worry about the underlying math, for example. So all these solutions that we talked about, are they simply hypothetical? The answer is no. We at Impetus have been helping our customers address some of these challenges. And we have found that though, democratization, the seeds for it were always there. But now with the data lake and its technical foundation, here they really find fertile ground. The low cost of the storage and processing and the seemingly unlimited potential for insights makes democratization a very viable and a lucrative prospect for businesses. Businesses are demanding solutions that help them put data into as many hands as possible. And the technology is responding to it. In the last few years, data warehouse-based applications for things like self-service or collaboration, visualization have been steadily rising in industry reports like the Gartner Magic Quadrant and the Forrester Waves. But at the same time, we see a growing awareness that governance and automation are going to be key for these features to work in a big data world. And so more and more applications are supplying governance and automation as differentiators in their products. So in the next segment, we'll briefly look at some interesting products in the market that address some of these aspects that we talked about just now, discovery, accessibility, and usability. The products that we have here were selected based on industry reports, and we have tried to select ones which have the most coverage of required features from a single vendor. Additionally, we have preferred ones that have out-of-the-box support for big data platforms, though not in all areas that has been possible, but those were our selection criteria. We'll take a look at some of the tools that we were just talking about. So we'll begin with data discovery. Now, data discovery, as we discussed earlier as well, is a term that is used by many types of applications today. It has been used to describe BI tools, master data management tools, analytical algorithms, and many, many more. Here, we will focus on applications that provide solutions for metadata, cataloging and discovery and so on, and searchability and collaboration, and discovery in its data science sense. These are the infrastructural services that form the basis of powerful discovery capabilities. We are not looking at the ease of use because that is an outcome of these capabilities, and so we are not looking at it just yet. However, we will see those tools in our usability segment. So as you can see from the slide above, the discovery space is well populated by new and established vendors. Indeed, actually the capability of, many of the capabilities, meta and master data management, which actually does things like metadata collection, consolidation, and has some governance capabilities, and also capabilities to search and collaboratively enrich metadata. These are not very new to the data warehouse paradigm, so they have existed. However, these gain a new importance in the data lake. Here, the data is truly decentralized in all aspects of its life cycle. In its acquisition, in its integration, in its usage. And so it becomes important to have solutions which can enable everyone, everyone across the spectrum to contribute to its curation and description. What seems to be lacking, however, is the automation of the discovery processes. This is where unknown properties of data are discovered through application of data science algorithms like profiling and classification, or automation of metadata capture as an integrated part of the data lifecycle in terms of capturing data associations, lineage, and so forth. This capability is crucial in the data lake because here we cannot count on manual discovery processes being able to keep up with the volumes. But at the same time, with the data science and the resources of the data lake, the potential for offerings to emerge in this area is very clearly present. In fact, profiling and classification are often some of the core use cases for the data lake in any organization. At this moment, we can see, however, that there is a lack of focus in leveraging big data and commoditizing such use cases from most vendors. At Impetus, it has been an experience that while significant discovery capabilities already exist in the market, as we can see, it still requires a lot of system integration effort to get them working on the data lake. And this also has substantial cost, of course. But we still see a strong interest among our customers who recognize the value of democratization. We see them investing in discovery capabilities in light of the business benefits that, they know that it can bring. Let's move on to data accessibility. Now, this is an area that is very sparse as of yet, because there was no traditional requirement for accessibility as a solution on its own. As we discussed, it was as simple as maybe even emailing someone for approval and then getting IT to set up appropriate privileges. However, this is no longer the case for the data lake. Depending on the policies that an organization has and the topology of their lake, granting access and provisioning data may involve many steps, such as the determination of its ownership, determination of the nature of the data, and what governance policies may be applicable thus. For example, whether data contains personal information or maybe payment information, stuff like that. Then it would be subject to different kinds of governance policies. And this is not known upfront. Further, enactment of such policies need to be done on several platforms. The ways of setting up, let's say, access control, if it's needed, masking or tokenization on different kinds of stores is very different. And finally, if a potential movement of data is needed to a separate location such as a sandbox, that also is something that needs to be dealt with. So we see that any accessibility solution, any holistic accessibility solution must have mechanisms for defining and tracking such a process. It should be integrated, ideally, with a discovery and metadata solution so that users can find the data themselves and just request for it right from there. So, have self-service capabilities thus, where users can themselves trigger the process and then use the workflows to monitor it to its fulfillment. And potentially it should also aid in the actual provisioning where data requires movement. As more and more data lakes come up in organizations, these features will inevitably be in demand because IT processes will start bottlenecking. Even now, in Impetus, we are helping our customers who are facing such challenges, helping them implement self-service governance and data access solutions. We can see from this slide that the native big data warehouse vendors, such as Cloudera, Hortonworks, Mappa, they are already working towards achieving access management and governance support, but they are still missing integration with discovery solutions, which we feel is a key part that leads to the kicking off of the access process. And they are missing the self-service paradigms that are needed. And Colibra, as mentioned here, is probably the only vendor that we have had experience with whose solution combines access management, discovery, and self-service. But it is not a data lake native solution. And so it has no integrations with the big data platforms to automate any of this. All of that needs to be done by the IT teams outside of the system. So that's the state of accessibility offerings in the market at the moment. So now we look at some usability offerings, and you'd see that this is formatted differently. And actually, we are forced to take a different perspective when looking at these because usability solutions are varied, very varied, to the point that no clear comparisons can exist between any of them. For example, a visualization and a virtualization product comparing them is an apples to oranges comparison. Both have very different outcomes in mind. But as we can see, this space is quite densely populated. It is seeing the strongest demand from the market. Visualization and self-service BI, of course. I mean, I'm sure many of us are using these paradigms in our businesses. And these are steadily gaining on legacy reporting as the preferred source of insights. This in itself is actually a clear evidence of democratization in progress. Businesses are moving to empower business users to find new insights. Market demand has led to almost all traditional reporting vendors to add these capabilities to their portfolio. Now, data blending is another new area. This is new, and it is sort of very relevant in the data lake. It allows for stitching together of data sets that are spread across stores. So, for example, you can stitch a file with the data in a file with data in an Excel sheet and data in a table, and create a new joint view that is more suitable for analysis. And this is made possible by the availability of cheap storage in the data lake, where it is viable now to allow individual users to create copies of data sets and blend them in various ways. Again, we can see a significant number of products in this due to strong demand. Now, SQL Loop is a bit of an outlier. It's an umbrella term for some products or tool sets that allow data stored in big data platforms to be queried using the familiar SQL language. So it's not really a user-facing application as much as an infrastructural component. But what it does is enabling the porting of legacy applications on the data lake, and opens up the data lake to be used by a significant number of users who already know the SQL language. And we can see the open source community being strong drivers in this field, because they recognize, this is due to the origin of big data in open source actually. So they recognize that the big data technologies have a huge compatibility gap and learning curve for businesses and users respectively. And which cannot be reasonably overcome. So this support is introduced to allow people to get value out of the data lake while using existing paradigms. And then we have virtualization solutions, which actually create abstractions over the storage platform, and the value of this is only growing as storage platforms are proliferating. So they can abstract users and applications from the underlying technical complexity and allow the data to be used in standard ways like using SQL and so on. And as with big data coming into the picture, as many of the solutions have existed previously also, with the advent of big data, more and more of these solutions are beginning to support big data stores also, like Hive, HBase, and so forth. And last but not the least, we have analytics products, which have moved away from statistician-oriented tools like R, for example, to more business user-friendly offerings, where vendors, mostly vendors who are developing BI and visualization, are actually providing analytical algorithms as drop-in widgets into their BI capability. And this can really allow business users to manipulate and mine the data in many new powerful ways. So as we can clearly see, there is a great demand in the market to simplify the usage of data, and technology is responding. So let's summarize what we looked at so far. So we heard some arguments for democratization, for letting data benefit all users at all levels of the organization. These are the people who are making decisions that impact businesses every day. And they need to be empowered with the information they need to make the best decisions at the right time. We believe that data democratization is going to be the big disruption resulting from big data, not just scale, because scales change. Every few years, what was big will become the new norm. However, it is the power of putting the data lake, putting information into hands of all users that will really cause a disruption in the way decisioning is happening in businesses. And we can see the change already happening, as we saw from the tools and the trends in the market. And demand is there. Demand is driving the tools, and technology is shaping up to answer it. So we feel that businesses, to remain competent, because as their peers gradually move to adopt data democracy, maybe not in this in these using the exact same words as data democracy, but we can see a clear trend of businesses moving on to it, and we feel that every organization needs to embrace this to remain competitive and maintain agility.
Thank you, Pranav. That was really, really insightful. And we'll quickly move on to the Q&A section. I'll really encourage my audience today for sending in the questions using the chat or the Q&A panel. We also have a rating poll at the end where we'll be requesting you to rate your overall experience with the webinar today. But we'll like to take the audience questions now. We have already started receiving few. And one of the questions that we have, Pranav, is about SQL on Hadoop. And one of the audience members wants to know, are there any open source products available for SQL on Hadoop? And are there any real enterprise-grade tools among them?
Yes, Pankaj. So, of course, SQL on Hadoop is a very important paradigm. I mean, that is helping businesses really use the data lake immediately, I mean, with their existing investments into applications and such. And so there are definitely many products that incorporate these capabilities in an enterprise-ready package. For example, all the vendors that we saw, Mapr, Cloudera, and so on, who are actually supplying enterprise-grade big data platforms ready to deploy, incorporate many of these features within themselves. However, they are building these on top of the open source work that has been done by the community, and there is a healthy interchange of IP between enterprise-grade vendors and the open source community. So the effort to bring SQL onto Hadoop is not really divergent into an open source and an enterprise way of doing things. It's more like open source is building the tools, and enterprise-grade Hadoop vendors are taking those, integrating them into their own platform, and providing the necessary support that enterprises require on top of that.
Okay, thank you. Another question that we have is that we have said that there are a lot of tools that are ready, but it really sounded like there are a lot of pieces out there, but the work to connect them all together to achieve usability sounds like a significant hurdle. So how realistic is it today to achieve democratization?
Yes, well, I can understand how that can sound like that. And I mean, it's not an incorrect reading. We see it ourselves that significant system integration effort is usually required in deploying a holistic data integration product or solution. But that is the natural part of a technology's adoption lifecycle. The technology right now is making a transition from early adopters to the mainstream, and a heavy involvement of system integrators is natural while a consolidated products emerge. But to answer the question, how realistic it is today to achieve democratization, it is completely possible to embark on the journey right now while building the whole product for democratization. Might take some time, but there are tools available right now which can really unlock many opportunities for businesses. I mean, the self-service and visualization tool offerings, things like Tableau or ClickSense. I mean, these people are within their product. They are supplying various pieces of these solutions. It's not complete, but it is already helping businesses take their productivity to the next level. I mean, it is already helping businesses right now. So it is completely realistic to embark on the journey right now. To get a complete product, yes, that will take some time.
Thank you, Pranav. I think we are approaching very close to the end of our allotted time here today, and we'll still like to remind our audience that because of shortage of time, we can always take more questions. If you can email them to us at events@impetus.com or bigdata@impetus.com. We'd also encourage our audience to download a free report that was published in collaboration with TWI about the tips to modernize your data warehouse, and you can download it from our website, www.impetus.com. Now, towards the closing, I would like to invite your feedback about today's session, and we're just opening a poll. We'll like you to rate your experience with the webinar and provide any feedback also to make our webinars better going forward. Thank you so much for joining us today once again, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.